is now set for rerun and runoff elections as INEC distributes materials.
State Police Command arrest 8 more suspects in connection with kidnap of school children and murder of 2 mourners.
And President Bola Tinubu orders cleanup of forest coastal areas.
Good morning, Nigeria. Today we shall discuss the February 3 by-elections in Nigeria.
All right, so Saturday, February the 3rd, that's tomorrow, will be a definitive date for 26 states across the country. And that, of course, is as INEC conducts rerun and by-elections in those states. Election materials have been delivered to the affected locations according to INEC, so all is set, hopefully.
All right, well, we always hear eve to the election. Well, the exercise will take place in 26 states, and the Central Bank of Nigeria is working with INEC in distributing materials. INEC is also seeking the cooperation of the Nigerian Air Force to deliver materials in difficult-to-reach communities in 3 locations in the northeast, southeast, and southwest geopolitical zones.
Okay, so let's break it down for you. 2 senators, 4 members of House of Representatives, and 3 members of State Houses of Assembly will be elected in by-elections in 9 states. That's to replace members who passed on or resigned their membership of the National Assembly to probably take up one or the political responsibilities or not, and of course the State Houses of Assemblies.
The rerun elections will take place at designated constituencies or polling units in other states in accordance with orders by the election appeal tribunals.
So let's now paint a clearer picture for you.
That sounds nice.
Yes,
clear.
yes.
Painting a clearer picture.
In a very rhythmic. So vacancies will be filled in 3 senatorial districts. Of course, there will be 11 federal and 28 state constituencies and 575 registration areas and wards.
All right, INEC and CBN will, as usual, take charge of election materials from focal airports to states where election will hold. Like all elections, outcomes are quite difficult to predict. But we have a panel of guests who will join us in the course of the program, to talk about the build-up to these elections and the anticipated outcomes. That's our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today. Many thanks for joining us. I'm Ian Ray John. It's a Friday.
And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. Always a pleasure to have you join us live on the network service of the NTA. In a moment, we'll be joining our colleague to give us highlights of the morning news, and then later I'll be talking business. Much later, Chukwudi Kodigbaja will join us for the newspaper review, and hopefully just before we wind our processions for today, we'll be taking a look at the world of sports. Of course, not forgetting the crucial encounter we'll be having today at 9 p.m. That's the Super Eagles and, of course, the Antelopes of Angola. For now, let's join Ogo Chukwuka on for highlights of the morning news. Ogo, good morning.
Good morning, Claire and Ian. And I must tell you, Nigerians are waiting for the Angola match with Nigeria. It's going to be a cracker, as they say in the sports world.
We'll just keep our fingers crossed.
Yes. Thank you very much for joining us. And now the morning news is here. By-elections in Nigeria. Electorate in some constituencies in 26 states will vote in by-elections slated for this Saturday, 3rd of February 2024. The level of preparations for the exercise in the 26 states of the Federation are geared up.
Only those with permanent voters card, if you don't have your PVC, then you have no business being there. Beavers will be used before voting, and results will be uploaded to INEC result viewing.
Similarly, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, has ordered the restriction of movement on roads and waterways from 12 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the evening on Saturday, 3rd February 2024 in 26 states where rerun and by-elections will hold. First Public Relations Officer Olumuyiwa Adejobi conveyed the directive at a press briefing in Abuja.
The IGP urges political parties, candidates, and their supporters to conduct themselves responsibly and in accordance with the electoral laws, as any attempt to disrupt the electoral process or violate the established guidelines will be met.
And now security matters. The Ekiti State Police Command has arrested 8 more suspects in connection with the kidnap of school children. The arrested suspects are also being charged for the murder of 2 monarchs in the state. President Bola Tinubu has ordered the clearing up of forests and coastal areas to rid them of criminals and illegal miners. The Minister of Environment, Balarabe Abbas Lawal, has been asked to champion this cause with another commitment by the President to strengthen the National Biosafety Management Agency.
Issues of security that has developed the nation brought a letter to the Minister of Defense to give us more arms. But what I'm thinking of is that rather than going for arms from the Minister of Defense, we will now convince the President to allow us to buy.
I sincerely thank the President and the Honourable Minister for this effort.
The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, has commended the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria for championing the cause of the Green Energy Initiative introduced by the federal government as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy. This was when the minister hosted IPMAN and other strategic groups championing constructive collaboration with the government.
Nigeria IPMAN are particularly supportive of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu Green Energy Initiative, which climaxed in the advent of the CNG.
I'm happy that you recognize that, and I'm happy that you are partnered with the federal government to achieve the CNG initiative.
And in a miracle that defies all odds, a Nigerian couple has been blessed with not just 1, but 6 bundles of joy at the National Hospital in Abuja after a heart-wrenching 13-year battle with infertility. Today, the heavens have bestowed upon them the happiness as they proudly welcome 6 precious newborns into their loving arms. From a journey filled with despair to an extraordinary tale of resilience and hope, the extraordinary moment has left an entire nation in awe and merriment.
Though everything that other women feel, I felt more than double. God took me through.
I'll assure you, we'll see how we can be visiting your family time to time to see how we can give our support in seeing us bringing the children up.
Indeed, very heartwarming. And those are the news highlights for now. Good Morning Nigeria will continue with Claire and Erie after the break.
All right, welcome back to the program. Let's begin with business news. And we hear that the federal government is projecting between $10 and $5 billion gain. That's when all prospecting license 245 issues are hopefully resolved. For details, let's join Kunle Adeyeye.
The Minister of State for Petroleum, Resources, Oil, Henikin Lukubiri, who disclosed that negotiation between federal government and partners is still ongoing, emphasized that Nigeria is projected to gain $5 to $10 billion when all issues regarding oil prospecting license 245 are resolved. The minister, who debunked an online publication insinuating that the government, Shell, Eni and Malabu had reached an agreement, said the publication is a wrong representation of facts. He clarified that no agreement had been reached, as both parties are still negotiating.
This agreement has nothing to benefit the president as an individual. But as President Commander-in-Chief, his interest is the welfare of Nigerians. His interest is to attract requisite investment to the sector, so that Nigerians can benefit from these God-given natural resources. And this bloc has been embroiled in one form of litigation or the other for 28 years. It doesn't make any sense for us to continue to live. And as I said, the world is going towards abandonment of fossil fuel. If we don't get these investments in now, they will forever remain in the soil.
While expressing optimism that the issues will be resolved soon, he said the oil bloc has the highest number of deposits, which will be of immense benefits to Nigeria's economy. With Business News, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Many thanks, Kunle, for the update. Up next is newspaper review.
Right, and it's a Friday. My pleasure to welcome Chukwudi the boy, who came springing into the studio as if he was on the field of play against Angola.
We agree at the door that nobody should announce the fact that I came in late. Claire, why are you this way?
I said you came springing in. I didn't say you came in late.
Nigeria will beat Angola tonight.
Yeah,
talking about springing.
No. Please,
Nigeria
let's not go there. You know, I like to remain. I like to remain quiet, and that was what I did when Nigeria met Cameroon.
Yeah.
So I was very quiet about it. I didn't even watch. I didn't make any predictions, but I was holding my heart in my hands and and hoping.
But you told us, Claire, when this started, that when we start poorly, we usually finish very well. And I said it was a weird theory in human progression.
It wasn't.
It has worked out.
It wasn't
so
my calculation. Honestly,
yes.
I was following Coach. I think Coach Bumi, who came on site and actually, made that projection for us. But my own was that over the years, I've taken note that when our Super Eagles come out in all white, in all white jersey, it's very rarely do we win.
Really?
Yes, I've taken note of that consistently. But when they come out in our green, spotted green, white and green,
wow,
you find so I really don't know, but that's my observation.
Okay.
And it's been like that.
So against Cameroon, something in colors.
Yes, against Cameroon, we were out in our green, spotted green, all green.
Wow.
Yes, well, and you saw the Cameroonians came in white.
That's interesting.
Yes. So please come out in green today, please. All right, so let's quickly take a look at the Daily Trust. The Daily Trust has a very detailed and graphically spread rising cost of living, and it has rice is costing 70,000 naira, flour 44,000 naira per bag, cement 7,000 naira per bag. It's not difficult to survive in Nigeria. That's according to Daily Trust. Tame inflation, tackle insecurity. That's Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It's saying there. And if we can just zoom in, we'll see the graphic representation of rice. 50 kg bag of rice there is about 45,000 naira. You see the blue graph pole there, and then of course the highest been 70,000 naira, and that was in early January 2024. It was 45,000 naira. The blue represents that, and the gray color is representing what it is by late January 2024. It had gone up from 45,000 naira to 70,000 naira. And a bag of flour, was 35,500 by early January, and late January, it had gone up to 44,000 naira. The same thing with 50 kg of sugar, 62,000 naira, represented by the blue, graph there, and then 75,000 naira by late January, and so on and so forth. But this is the graphic presentation according to Daily Trust findings. So that's that. So we move away from that. Ahead of Saturday's by-election, PDP Plateau protest, omission and ballot. That's on page 13. Naira gains sells for 1,400 naira per dollar at the parallel market, page 24. You can read that up. And of course, Niger junta expels EU recovery mission members, and that's on page 6. Just a little below the nameplate, Gaza, NSCIA asks ICJ to halt genocide against Palestinians. Ekiti abduction, are children left without food, beaten by captors. Now this is heart, rendering. I don't want to talk about that. That's all from the Daily Trust area.
All right, looking at the leadership now, the lead story here says, again, student loan misses January deadline. The riders' expansion hurdles, causes of delays coming from an official. Students, parents press for timely commencement. Above the masthead, we have Nigeria versus Angola. Pesero plays down favorite tag. Next to that, we have kidnappers demand food items, 290 million naira to release FCT hostages. Very sad development there. Page 12 has all the details. And finally, from the leadership, we have CBN's takeover of sales proceeds from NNPCL, illegal. And that's coming from Ateko. Looking at the nation now, the lead story is on the Naira, and says Naira's fall. CBN moves against banks for hoarding $5 billion. Above the masthead, we have pressure mounts on abductors of Ekiti pupils. IG deploys AIG assets, kidnappers lower ransom demand. Beside that, we have I am the unifier for Edo PDP. That's coming from Igodalo. Zamfara OK's payment of gratuities for teachers and workers. Finally, this morning, below the picture story of the nation, we have state police, way to go, say governors, legal giants, orders. All right, that's some of the stories. Okay, let me just quickly take this one. Is on the election tomorrow. That happens to be our topic this morning. So, INEC excludes PDP from by-election in Plateau State. Court stops Ebonyi PDP senatorial candidates. All of that you can find in the nation. Chukwudi.
State police is not a constitutional thing today in Nigeria. We are running the unitary system that has the police centralized, police command centralized. But maybe it is time for the authorities, politicians, really, to begin to think about empowering the vigilantes we have on ground at the moment to further capability and all that. We might not call it state police. In my town, there is relative peace, and they are praising the vigilante in that town. The police could take all the credit and all that. They too are part of it. But we know what the vigilante are doing. I think it's time for Nigerians to begin to think whether empowering the law enforcement agents under the ambit of state authorities might help, because the kind of stories you get from this kidnapping, 290 million naira being demanded by
and food stuff.
And the sad thing is that the people who perpetrate this, you hardly see any of them beyond 35 years of age. They are young people. I remember an incident that saw my elder brother in police cell. They were accused of robbery. One policeman came, took a look at my brother and said, did they say he went on robbery? They are lying. This one is too old to go on robbery. The point I'm making is, it is the young people of Nigeria that are being exploited in banditry, terrorism and all that. So what do we do to harness the lives of young people into more meaningfulness and productivity? It is a task that must be done. Otherwise, we'll keep on singing the old song of recurring criminality and all that. Look at the minister is saying here, use of youth for violence. The Minister of Youth Development, Dr. Jamilu Bio Ibrahim, has said Nigerian youths are both victims and masterminds of violence across the country. So how do we bring our youths back from the cold and rehabilitate them? It is very important. We have to handle it. He observed here, Nigeria is blessed. You have aging populations in Canada, US, UK, but here we have young people. He actually observed that you know, out of the world's 1.8 billion youths, Nigeria has 10% of them. How do you now make this a productive workforce instead of partakers in criminality? That is a task we have to undertake. Very important. Very important.
I agree with you totally. You know, talking about engaging them meaningfully, I just wish our politicians would, you know, think the way you're thinking, because what we see is the opposite, and maybe that's why some of these crimes are on the rise. The youths are being empowered to go into negative vices, you know, by what they see our politicians display, or the kind of empowerment they get from our politicians. Instead of probably getting education or getting skills and all of that, what you see is they're used as thugs, you know, just because of one interest or the other, politically, or, you know, whatever interest that they have. And then you also see that, you know, politicians look for ways to you know, get these young people into things that are not profitable by their lifestyle. All right, so a young person sees a politician, you know, living the kind of life that is not, I mean,
a young person sees a situation where not being able to spray the naira at parties means that you're a failure in lifestyle. That's what you're talking about. You know, and anyway, there's a law against even spraying the naira. Come to
a young
do we
actress,
implement it?
Yesterday, I'm sure you must have seen the
story,
actress, you know, who you know, has been you know, sent to jail, you know, for spraying the naira and stepping.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know,
we don't deface our money. It's one of our national symbols.
That's a culture that, you know, we really have to work on. And, you know, I mean, personally, I try to educate, you know, the, you know, roadside traders, you know, when they give you back your change and they rumple, I said, no, spread it out, you know, flatten it and put it on. You don't rumple it. So we also try to reach out, educate them, you know, at our level, so that people know how to handle, you know, the money. But away from that,
including women who put the money in their bra, it's very important to also talk to them.
It's for safekeeping.
No, we are please, my dear sister, this is serious.
No, that was just a joke.
I'm not trying to be derogatory.
It also has.
I am matter of fact about it.
It also has some health implications.
Exactly. When you sweat into that note, it loses its, you know, crispness.
And then you do not know where the note has been and what it carries. So putting it
that
in
is
there,
more important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But again, I was going to talk about the escalation of this, you know, kidnap issues and why probably the young ones are, you know, getting involved. And I'm wondering, don't we see a nexus between, you know, the inflation, climate inflation, and, you know, the propensity of these, you know, young ones?
Yes.
Because right now we're in the first quarter, almost coming to the end of the first quarter of this year.
Yes.
And inflation is going higher and higher and higher.
Life is becoming more and more unaffordable. That's what you're saying.
Things are so difficult, even for parents, you know, are finding it difficult to afford even paying school fees, you know, meeting up with daily needs of their children. So you discover that even these boys, some of who are, you know, from broken homes, unfortunately, you know, try to find ways to survive. So if we begin to address, you know, inflation, begin to address the statistics.
One of the ways is to do something about the poor state of the Nigerian naira. This is an import-dependent nation. That means that prices are going to be ruled by what happens to the dollar, which is what you use to import. What we use to import.
At a time,
we need to really work
at
on
a time,
because it will have a bandwagon effect on
at
the
the
rest
time,
of
the
it.
talk was on diversification of the economy. Diversification of the economy. We want to move from a mono economy, you understand, to look at other ways. And we're looking at even moving from fuel, as a revenue, major revenue earner. And that's why I think yesterday, or the day before yesterday, on Good Morning Nigeria, we looked at, maize. And what the Ministry of Agric and the biotech agency and are doing to add value to maize.
Yes.
So we're told that they now have
the drought resistant,
yes,
and
new
insect
hybrid maize,
resistant,
yes,
pest resistant.
Not just pest resistant. It also has a higher yield, harvest yield
propensity.
Yes, propensity
that's
for higher. And
this is one of the things our universities were known for in those days. Research and development.
So if we're able to double production capacity of maize, for instance, and you know that maize is used for a number of things. Maize is used as
goes into
feeds,
up to 7 different
So if we're able to do that, and we're able to meet our deficiency, consumption deficiency, because right now Nigeria is one of the largest producer of maize. But unfortunately our export, we're not meeting our export.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that has to do with preservation and helping people to get into the export train and all that.
Yes.
There's something we need to talk about concerning maize. We don't know why we have so many ailments, cancers and all that these days. I was talking to a lady that my farm did not do quite well. They introduced me to a guy who said, I'll help you get better yield next year. But there's something they do. They take something that is actually labeled poison, wrap it up thickly and put it inside the bag. That is how they guard against the maize, being attacked by pests.
It's called a balm. That's what they call it in the market.
Oh, you know about
it already? Yes, I know about it.
I didn't want to mention
it's a black tablet.
Yes.
It's not just in maize. They put it in beans too.
They put it there. So you don't know what is causing some of the ailments we have here.
Yes,
I'm saying this so that
just before we let you
health and agriculture can step in
just before
and
we
help
let
the people preserve
just before we
more
let you
safely.
we also raised that issue with the DG of Biotech Agency, and she certified that whatever it is that they're doing genetically with the maize had been certified
healthy.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about preservation as employed by local people.
It's also part of the concerns raised.
It's okay.
Yes, it's also part of the concerns raised. And again, not just the Super Eagles we're vying for. Let's also celebrate Amusa. Amusa did us proud at the beginning of the open indoor games. She hurdled 12.41. Beating, of course, our records, which has been there for a very long time. So let's not also celebrate the
more success.
I agree.
More success.
Well, thanks, Chikudi.
So what would you be doing for the Eagles? Praying for them?
No. I'm going to.
I'll call you.
I'm going to inject more belief. I have to confess.
I'll wake you up at 10 p.m. tonight.
That's a good one.
Have a good weekend.
I'm not going to sleep off anyway.
At about 10:30, I think that's when the match will be over.
I will be bright-eyed and early.
All right, so we hope you have a swell weekend, Chikudi. So we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll get into the conversation. Stay with us. Watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Just before we bring in our guests to talk about the by-election, which would happen tomorrow, let's take a background report put together by Abdusalam Jibril.
By-elections in Nigeria often play a critical role in shaping the country's political trajectory. These special elections are held to fill vacant positions in the National Assembly, state houses of assembly, and local government councils. By-elections can arise due to various reasons, including the death, resignation, or disqualification of a sitting office holder. The importance of by-elections lies in their potential to influence the balance of power within Nigeria's legislative bodies. A single victory in a by-election can have significant implications for the ruling party's parliamentary majority or the opposition's strength. Consequently, by-elections are closely watched by political analysts and parties alike, as they provide crucial insights into the electorate's opinions and voting patterns. Moreover, by-elections serve as a litmus test for the popularity and appeal of political parties and candidates. They provide an opportunity for voters to express their support or dissatisfaction with their representatives at all levels of government. These elections can serve as indicators of public opinion, as well as the effectiveness of campaign strategies employed by political parties. As a result, these elections can contribute to strengthening the democratic process by fostering a sense of political ownership and accountability among constituents. It is also noteworthy that by-elections have the potential to bring new faces and voices into the political arena. As political parties nominate candidates to contest vacant seats, emerging leaders and individuals with fresh perspectives often seize the opportunity to campaign for public office. By-elections therefore offer a platform for aspiring politicians to make their debut on a regional or national stage, potentially diversifying and rejuvenating Nigeria's political landscape. As INEC is set to conduct by-elections and rerun elections in 26 states of the Federation on the 3rd of February 2024, guests on Good Morning Nigeria will anatomize the process of by-elections in Nigeria, which are crucial and have far-reaching implications for the country's political dynamics. The guests will also point out how by-elections in Nigeria offer a window into public opinion, contribute to the evolution of political leadership, and provide key insights into the behavior of political parties and the electorate.
Ibrahim and Amidu, thank you for that background. So we welcome you if you've just joined us, and you're right on time as we begin our conversations on, of course, the rerun and runoff elections scheduled to hold on Saturday. We have right here in the studio Mary Nkem, who is Director, Voter Education and Publicity, INEC. Thank you very much, Madam, for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
And we also have joining us delectable Cynthia Mbamalo. And Cynthia is Director, Program Yaga Africa. Cynthia, good to see you.
Good morning and good morning, Nigeria.
All right, also joining us for the conversation is Arms Free Ajanaku, Media and Elections Expert. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
I think that's an unusual name.
Arms free.
Arms free. I hope your arms will be free in this conversation. All right. Today we're having two ladies and a gentleman. We are also expecting one of the guests to join us, but we'll introduce him if and as soon as we do connect with him. So let's start. And I would like to start with the Director of Voter Education and Publicity of INEC, just for clarification and explanation purposes. We all know that the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has a provision that requires political parties who are vying for positions to have a kind of broad-based support to be able to be declared an outright winner in an election. So please kindly explain to us and to the viewer what exactly or why do rerun and runoff elections occur?
Thank you very much. Well, for rerun or runoff, not by-election. Okay, I think I'll start with by-election. Okay. By-elections do occur when the Commission has made a declaration, and for one reason or the other, the representative dies, or maybe when such person has even assumed office or not yet assumed office, and he or she is appointed to another office. So it creates a vacancy in that place. So we need to conduct by-election to fill that vacancy. Okay. That is for by-election. Okay. And for rerun elections, elections are conducted, but of course, people who have issues will readily go to the court
to challenge the election as maybe for one reason or the other, and when the court takes a decision and nullify such an election, then it demands that INEC will conduct a rerun election for that position.
So who are those who are eligible now to participate in either the rerun or by elections?
Well, by elections, by elections are fresh elections, so fresh people come, conduct primaries, and the candidates emerge and they participate.
All political parties are involved in the by-elections?
For the by-elections,
yes.
Political parties,
all the political parties?
Yes, political parties that participated they are involved. They can nominate candidates, they can do their primaries and conduct. But for the rerun, it's only for those who participated in the election before. So in that case, we don't need to conduct any primaries any longer for the rerun.
Okay, yes. Beautiful. Thank you for the explanation, Mary and Kem. I'd like to get to Cynthia Umbamalu now. First, just the states, 26 states are involved in these elections that we're having tomorrow, and of course you have been working closely with INEC. I just want to tell us from your own point of view, do you think that INEC is ready? Of course, if I ask Mary now, she'll tell me, oh yes, we're ready, we've deployed materials and none of that. But from what you've seen in past and what is happening and preparations for tomorrow, where do you think INEC stands?
As it is based on observation and feedback from observers of the field, I would say that a lot of preparations have gone into the planning for the elections. And so if you follow also updates on media platforms, you see INEC giving its updates on the materials that will be moved, and the security giving its updates on its deployment for security. So I would say reasonably there is preparations for INEC is reasonably prepared for the elections, and I'm saying this cautiously because that there are always things that may come up that maybe were not planned for or envisaged. But if you look at the conversations across the states, because like Madam Mary mentioned, we have elections happening in some states, some constituencies, so it's not across every state, because most of these elections are legislative elections. So we have the by-elections and we have the rerun elections, and so for the engagement, I think it's beyond just the planning, the logistics for the elections, the planning for the logistics for the elections. It's also about the engagement with the prospective voters in those elections. And why I say that is because it's one thing to plan, invest and deploy materials and personnel. It's another thing to have the voters turn out to vote. And in the last election, there's one thing that was a major challenge. It was voter turnout. And so for these elections, if there's one part I would say that a lot of work needed to be done, is in civic education and voter mobilization, so that even the voters know, okay, it's only those of us in this senatorial district or in this federal constituency or in this state constituency that will be voting. It's not a statewide elections, and that those within those locations understand the value of the elections, that your legislature is an important, or your legislator is an important representative that you need to ensure you're choosing the right person. So I think, well, for the elections, there's been a lot of updates around logistics, planning and deployment, but very little around voter mobilization and civic education. But because we're also discussing about the election, from our experience in previous elections, if there's one thing we're learning is that INEC needs to invest in its communication, especially as it begins deployment. So if there are locations where there are challenges on elections day, it's also important to communicate timely that these are some challenges we're experiencing and this is how we'll be resolving it immediately. And why do I say so? We've had beautiful plans for deployment and logistics in previous elections, but we've gotten to locations where polls don't either open on time or materials don't arrive, or personnel are not available to conduct the elections. And you always wonder, but we had a fantastic plan, we had a beautiful briefing with the Electoral Commission, what happened? But most times there's a lot of silence on the part of the Electoral Commission. And I think if in this process of rebuilding trust between citizens and the Electoral Commission, if there's one thing INEC can do in these elections beyond its planning, is investing timely and proactive communication. If there are issues that need immediate resolution on elections day, it's communicated and INEC highlights the actions they are taking to address those issues. And if there are places that there are challenges with moving materials, because I know, I think the Air Force also security said they will help in airlifting some of the materials in some of the locations. If at any reason there is any delay, either from transport companies or from the security agents that will help in the lifting of those materials, it should be communicated so that the voters there know that, oh, there is no attempt to sabotage the process. It is just a challenge that needs to be resolved. I think that way it makes it easier for people to trust the process.
In layman's language, it's called carry the people along.
Yes.
You know, so just INEC, just carry the people along. Whatever you're doing. But Mr. Armsfree, I know you have experience, you know, monitoring elections, and that's why you are the expert here. I just like, before we delve into the nitty-gritty of, you know, Saturday's election and the future, I just like you to, you know, run your mind for us over rerun elections in this country and what we've been able to learn. In 2015, we also had rerun elections, and you know, it's brought up, you know, the same issues that, you know, bedeviled the major elections. We talked about, you know, late arrival of materials. We talked about professional conduct, both of security and all that. Can you have we been able to learn anything, and are you expecting something different from this rerun election?
Yes, I think one of the very optimistic realities that we are seeing in the electoral process is the fact that the election management body, in terms of learning from the past, is now very quick to give the narrative that this election, whether you call it a rerun election or a by-election, is not just about us as INEC. It's not just about what we do. And so INEC has been out there giving, you know, the messaging around that, in the fact that this is a multi-stakeholder approach. So we have seen the INEC chair, for example, reaching out to the Air Force, Nigerian Air Force, you know, calling for collaboration, calling for a synergy in terms of logistics. And we must make no mistake about the fact that a number of these elections will be taking place in hard-to-reach areas. So these are areas that even in general elections proved very very difficult, you know, to access. And so the fact that INEC is positioning in a way that it's seen that, oh, we cannot do this alone. We need the support of other stakeholders, and we need to work across the board to ensure that everything we need to deliver, because we also must make no mistake about it. This is about the leadership recruitment process, you know, of Nigeria, and it is critical for our democracy, especially at a time across the world when democracy is challenged, for us to get it right and be able to learn those key lessons from previous elections. Another important point I think we need to make when we also look at it from the point of view of learning from what has happened from the past is the context of the election. And in previous elections, we've mentioned several of those factors like insecurity, for example. How do you, for example, give the assurances to the voters, the poll officials that will be going out there on election day, that the electoral terrain is safe enough for them? How do you instill that confidence in the process such that the people who have various aspects of the responsibility in the electoral process are able to go out there and discharge that responsibility in a way that gives the room for the voters to come out there and you know, exercise their franchise? So these are key issues that we must not isolate INEC and say, okay, this is solely INEC's responsibility, but INEC must be ready to work with all the other stakeholders in the process. And then while we hold to account INEC, we hold to account, you know, all the stakeholders in the electoral process, we must also be able to push the citizens, like as Cynthia said, that, you know, if you do all of this preparation, spend all the monies, mobilize, do all the logistics, and the voters do not come out, it amounts to expending energy without getting results. So we must ensure that we put the messaging out there for those relevant areas where they're going to come out on election day to vote. And to do that, I think the threat posed by disinformation is a major thing to consider. You know,
and that's why I want Madam Nkem, the elections will hold in 24 states, 26 states, 80 LGAs and 34 constituencies. How is INEC approaching this?
Well, the Commission has been meeting with the various stakeholders, just like my colleagues here have submitted. Particularly, before we started, the Commission met with the political parties before the Christmas break to alert them of the need for them to conduct the primaries and also gave them the schedule for the elections. Then thereafter, the Commission has consistently met with other stakeholders like the media to assist us in publicizing this election, the dates, the locations, and who can participate in it. The Commission has met with the ISES, that's the INEC and the security outfit that assist us in election security. I have met with them, and just a few days ago, within the week, I think on Monday or so, the Commission still met with ISES, and they've assured us, because like we said, election is a multi-stakeholder affairs. INEC is not a security outfit. INEC doesn't have the logistics, that's the vehicles to convey people, the men and material to polling units on election day. So we need to collaborate with all of these people in order to achieve the purpose, that is credible election. That is what we want to achieve. And the Commission has done that a lot by collaborating with relevant stakeholders.
All right, credible election. I think I want to take my next question from that. But we have our guest now from Kaduna, Dr. Salim Omale. He's the Executive Vice Chairman, Kaduna State Peace Commission. Many thanks for joining us, Dr. Salim Omale. I'm sure you've been following the conversation because you've been there for a while now. Madam Kemp just talked about credible election, and that made me to think about if our elections are actually credible the first time they are done, why would we be having a rerun? I'm just thinking. So Dr. Omale, every time there's a general election or anytime we have an election, then sometimes there's need to have a rerun, because that election, or there seemed to be an anomaly, in that particular election, and then the way a winner came out. I'm sure that's why we're having a rerun. So where would you want to put the blame of this fact that we are having rerun elections costing us more money, and of course all the other issues around it? Would you want to put it on INEC? Would you want to put it on the politicians, political parties, or even the electorate? Where exactly is the problem? Just so we can, solve this once and for all going forward.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigerians. First of all, I must appreciate the efforts and the commitment of Nigerians and the various institutions that have been put in place to manage our democratic process in keeping faith and doing all they can to sustain the democracy we are enjoying in this country. Like it was earlier mentioned, there are challenges to democratic practice, and we are aware of what is happening in some few countries within the West African sub-region. And I think that's a big wake-up call to all the stakeholders in the Nigerian democratic process to ensure that all those practices that are important for the democratic process are upheld and held in the best of ways to continue to give Nigerians the confidence and the faith in the democratic process. Like you mentioned earlier on, the Director of Voter Education has already clarified the difference between by-elections and rerun elections. For by-elections, they are natural. They are as a result of other developments that do not have to do with the conduct of the elections. But most of the rerun elections, like you rightly observe, have issues. They are issues that have arisen from the conduct of the elections. And mostly it comes out of the judicial process. The judiciary, happily, in the democratic process, people that are not satisfied with the outcome of the elections can go to the courts to challenge the conduct of the elections. And the court examines all the evidences, how the process was organized, and whether everything tallies with the provisions of the law and other arrangements that have been put in place, either at the level of the political parties or during the elections coming out of what the Independent National Electoral Commission did or was unable to do. So these are critical issues that leads to rerun elections. So like you said, if the main elections were highly credible without any lapses, the need for rerun elections might not have arisen in the first place. However, trying to say, for example, who is to be held accountable, I think that varies significantly from one polling unit to another polling unit, from one constituency to another constituencies. Certainly there are lapses sometimes that may arise from the conduct of the officials of the Independent Electoral Commission. There may be others that may even arise out of some few errors that are directly created by the Independent National Electoral Commission. For example, the omission of the name of some political parties or the logos of some political parties. You know, this is a technical error that arises usually from the Independent Electoral Commission. Sometimes it could be from the personnel that have been assigned the responsibility to conduct the elections on the election days. And we need to recognize that the Independent National Electoral Commission and national elections are ad hoc events. They are not events that happen every day. So it is impossible for INEC, for example, to employ, train, and maintain electoral officers that will be permanently staff of INEC. So they have to depend a lot on ad hoc staff and ad hoc personnel for the conduct of the elections. And sometimes you cannot guarantee the conduct of some of these temporary personnel that you bring on board. And I think this is a huge challenge that INEC really need to work on and see how can they build, for example, a network of officials with track history of experience in conducting previous elections so that they develop a database of people who worked for them in the last elections, who worked on very credible, who satisfied all the requirements, so that in the next election those same people can be invited and maybe even lobbied to continue to provide such good services to INEC. They should also be able to map out those who made mistakes, who caused INEC or who did some things that were incredible, so that they are blocked from participating as ad hoc staff of the Independent National Electoral Commission in future elections. At the other level are the political parties. Sometimes they trigger election violence within the polling units that make their elections inconclusive or incredible. So therefore, the political parties also have a credible role, and sometimes they can be held accountable for some of the reasons for the rerun elections. So the political parties, again, INEC has also regulatory responsibilities over the political parties. And the political parties also should work to deepen democratic processes within their own political parties. If we're able to have this, we'll have a significant improvement. At the third level is the security, which was earlier mentioned. In some areas, insecurity is a big challenge for the conduct of credible elections, and therefore it may challenge the way the elections have been conducted. So we also need to work with our security establishments, and then the security agencies, especially the Nigerian police and other paramilitary agencies that support election processes, need to be trained very well in order to support credible elections. Then finally are the voters. We ordinary Nigerian citizens who come out to do the voting, we must do it in a way that will ensure credibility, in such a way that aligns with the principles, with the rules and regulations of the elections. Sometimes we contribute to the process that leads to rerun elections. So the electorate themselves need a lot, and like earlier speakers have mentioned, voter education, citizens engagement, and making this process a Nigerian activity, not just that of few institutions, will help us a lot in having very credible, acceptable elections.
Dr. Momali, thank you. You've raised a lot of issues rising from my colleague's question to you. And then I think I would just escalate it further with my guests here in the studio. We'll get back to you in just a moment. Thank you for the points that you've raised. Again, I go to Cynthia. Yes, by elections, it's possible to conduct elections without, having by or run elections. But it's also, people also look at it as part of the inner workings of a democracy. So it's democratic. But when you have 26 states out of 37 states, you have 8 ELGs and 34 constituencies. Now, does that speak to the quality of the electoral process vis-a-vis the Electoral Act and, of course, the political parties themselves?
Well, I think there are different ways to look at this. First, for by-elections, we don't have control over that, right? Because, when we lose lawmakers, we need to fill the vacancy or when people get appointed. But for rerun, I think for rerun is where we need to begin to have more conversations around. And I love the way Doctor highlighted several factors that could lead to that, because it's not about just the Electoral Commission, it's about every stakeholder engaging that particular process. But if you ask me, honestly, I would say it's rerun calls a lot of questions on the quality of the process that is beyond just the elections they conduct, the pre-elections and the elections they conduct, because for some of the conversation, for some of the rerun, if you follow the cases in some of the states, it was a question around a court decision even challenging the conduct of some party primaries. And so it's beyond just the conduct itself on elections day. And I think as we begin to develop our electoral process, especially with our Electoral Act, we have a reasonably good electoral legal framework, right? If you think about the new Electoral Act of 2022, it is a beautiful law that a lot of citizens worked with the Electoral Commission, a lot of stakeholders, media engaged on that process to produce what we currently have. But the challenge we've always had is issues around compliance. It's issues around complying with the existing legal framework. And I don't know if it's a mindset problem with us as a people, or if it's just that a lot of us can easily be comfortable with not doing things the right way. And then I say this because it's beyond, like I said, it's beyond the Electoral Commission, right? If you have situations where elections are conducted in a location, but you have the community conspiring to step aside some parts of the rules, it's that because we call this community conspiracy. There are places where the Electoral Commission the officials want to do the right thing, and the community will say, no, this is how we want our elections to be conducted, and this is what we want you to do. If you don't want to do it, you leave here, or they threaten their lives. So it's beyond just the officials, it's also about the attitude of the people in that particular location, because when we don't have compliance with the rules, it affects the quality of the process. Then also the political parties, and honestly, I think we need to start calling our political elites, calling them out. Because it's one thing to reform our electoral process, it's another thing to have politicians with reformed mindsets. So if we are reforming our laws, if we are working with INEC, getting INEC to do the right thing, trying to get our processes right, but the actors, the major actors now, who are the candidates, the parties themselves, do not have a reformed mindset, they are not moving with the times, it means they will keep taking us back, because the individuals who invest in looking for ways to rig and manipulate the process are basically the politicians and the candidates and the parties. It's not necessarily INEC. Yes, we have some INEC staffs who become complicit, who are either bought or giving some monies to change the process, especially for the ad hoc personnel that are deployed. Some of them deployed at the results, the collation process, and even the polling unit process. But if there's no willing party coming with the monies to give them, to entice, it would also mean that you don't have people who would be enticed, because I don't necessarily see some people going and say, come and pay me money to change the process for you, right? So the question now is, can we have an open and honest conversation with our political elites, even as we move into these by-elections and the rerun? We already see some candidates and parties trying to to manipulate the game. This is not what our democracy ought to look like. And I think my brother Hamstreet talked about it with the recent incidences within our ECOWAS, within the West Africa sub-region, the issues around the coup and even Gabon and Central Africa. There is a lot of questions around democracy and if democracy is yielding the required results. And if people don't trust the process of leadership recruitment, which is the elections, it makes them to also lose faith in our democracy. And our politicians don't understand. I think a lot of them feel like we are immune from any sort of uprising. But the truth is, Frank Fanon will say that peasants do not protest because it's fashionable. They protest because they can no longer breathe. And when people get to a situation where they begin to question things, they can do whatever they want to do. And I need our political elite to understand that our electoral process being credible benefits everybody. And that if the system is credible, then voters will trust it enough to participate, and then we can begin to elect leaders who can represent our interests. But if they become complicit in such a way that all the work we do to reform our process is not affecting how they themselves engage the process from a reformed mindset, it means like we're just wasting all our effort. Trust me, we can strengthen INEC all we want, we can build and invest in the process all we want, but if we have political leaders, the elites who are still not willing to play by the rules of the game, it also creates bigger problem. And I think this is what has resulted to the levels of rerun that we have. Because rerun do not just happen for the sake of it. There are things that lead to that.
Thank you, Cynthia. From what you've said, you're placing the bulk on the part of politicians and political parties. But listening to Dr. Momali earlier, he talked about some lapses on the part of INEC, and that's why I want to bring Mary Nkem into the conversation. We're having this election tomorrow, 26 states. We know that, like I already mentioned, if I ask you what's the preparation, of course, you would tell me everything is in order. That's usually the response until election day, and they get to see all the different issues that crop up. But now let's be specific about these 26 states that will have in elections tomorrow. Has INEC identified some black spots? We want you to, tell us if there are areas where you think, there's a concern, and what INEC is doing to ensure that the process is smooth tomorrow.
Yes, the commission met with the arrestant electoral commissioners who man the state offices and who are on ground, who know the terrain and understand the happenings around. And a few of them raised concern in parts of their areas, and the commission did a good thing by documenting these locations, and all this have been made known to the security personnel. That is at the ISS meeting, the police. They have all the details of areas with the flashpoints where they need to be more proactive in terms of security outfits, how they maintain the security outfit around there. So they have them. And not only that, the commission has as well given to the personnel, security personnel, that's the ISS itself now. When we talk about them, we talk about the police, who is the lead agency, we talk about the Nigerian Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and so on. Now, they have also given them the locations of all the places where elections are taking place, the state, the local government areas, and even the constituencies. It will interest you to know that we are talking about having elections in 26 states, but in some of these locations, it might just be one polling unit. In some places, it's just 2 polling units in a constituency. So for the rerun, it's not like if they say they are having a rerun, maybe for instance for a particular election, it is not the entire constituency in most cases. It's just few areas, locations where there were issues and the results were upturned. That's where we are having this election. So the commission has done due diligence by giving to the security personnel those areas, the flashpoint areas that we think there are security challenges to the security, to map out more strategy to secure the process in those particular areas.
Okay, I'm free. Let's look at one of the thorny issues that may arise from this, yes, and that's of course looking at Plateau State. IPAC according to what we hear, has threatened to withdraw all the political parties in Plateau State from running if one of the political parties is not allowed. Probably basing their argument on the latest Supreme Court's decision. But INEC is saying, look, this is not a recent thing. You have also benefited from this, states, this condition years back. So this is a ruling that has been there. A disqualified candidate, a party cannot contest in a rerun election. How do you see that? What's the likely implication of this in the rerun elections in Plateau State?
Yes, so it's a log jam, I would say, what's happening in Plateau, and again, that brings us back to the role of the judiciary in intervening in the electoral process. We saw the Supreme Court decision, and we also saw the role played by the appeal court, because all of this also ties to what the appeal court did. That in the case of the governorship that went on to the Supreme Court was overturned by the Supreme Court, and so you actually have a logjam there. But what we as defenders of democracy, as crusaders for democracy, have always advocated is the people who want to contest in an election or who want to put themselves forward for service in terms of political office should first of all demonstrate that they can abide by the rule of law, because in this situation you cannot talk about any other rule except the rule of law, except there is a contrary decision of the court,
of the Supreme Court.
Yes, and those guys who feel disaffected or who feel they have been affected negatively by how the legal issues played out, except they have another, and we know that for some of those issues it terminates at the appeal court. So except there is a new judicial pronouncement to that effect, then they really would have to just wait it out and allow the process. So even before we started talking about the rerun, you also saw a situation in the House of Assembly where some of the lawmakers went there to say they wanted to resume on the basis of the Supreme Court. But of course, Nigeria is not a jungle. There are processes to these things, and I think this is also where some of the key institutions need to also play a role. We would expect by now that the National Judicial Council would also be doing some things to instill confidence and show that they can actually take charge of situations like this.
But mind you, IPAC is trying to twist INEC, but INEC is obeying, the rule of law. The rule of law.
Absolutely.
And the rule of law says once you're disqualified, you cannot participate. Cynthia, you want to come in, you want to win.
Yes, and it's just like what my brother said here. INEC is an institution created by law under the Constitution, right? INEC has to abide by the law, and we understand their sentiments, right? But the truth is, when it comes to the rule of law, it's not about sentiment. It's about what has been declared and what exists until there's an overturning of the current decision. It stands, and so it's for our political parties and candidates to realize that. And when you feel a bit disaffected, you should, because it's not about you, it's about service to the people. It's about the people. It's about the system. And so there should be a point where you step back and put personal interest aside and say, okay, this is the situation we're in. Are there other parties contesting that we want to support? Are there other people that have issues or manifestos that align with ours that we can mobilize voters to support? I think that is the kind of sportsmanship that we need to start seeing in our electoral process. But the thing is, you can't see, INEC has to act by the rule. It's an institution created by law, and yes, we feel for some of the sentiments that you've expressed, but when it comes to the rule, it's about sentiment. And like my brother said, the decision that ended at the Court of Appeal, that is until we amend the law and say for this cases you can then move. The last court would be the Supreme Court. Until that sort of amendment happens, the Court of Appeal is the final arbiter when it comes to issues arising, especially for legislative elections. So as it is now, this is an appeal to the people of Plateau State, to the voters, to the parties, to the candidates, to IPAC, who is the leadership, to understand that we exist within a rule of law, and we cannot appropriate and reprobate. We cannot accuse people of not acting by the rules, but we ourselves don't want to act by the rules, and that we need peace to reign in Plateau State and every other state. So for the IPAC leadership, for the candidates, for the parties, they need to have that conversation before tomorrow and resolve this issue. I understand that INEC needs to do its work. These distractions are also not helpful for the Electoral Commission to commit its work. And there are other parties on the ballot. Exactly. And it's about rallying the voters who aligns with your interest.
And if you consider the security implications that will again bring to bear in those areas, because it's Plateau North, Riyom, Bassa, and all the places that have been, that come under.
So for peace to reign, yeah.
Okay, security, always an issue when we talk about elections in Nigeria, and we're just looking forward to a time when we'd actually have elections and people would not be worried about the security situation. Dr. Momale, I'm sure you want to weigh in on this particular issue on the plateau, but away from that, while you give your own comments about it, I want to find out what you feel about the polls of Nigerians, as regards elections. Cynthia mentioned it, and of course the statistics are there. One of the major issues we have in our elections is voter apathy. It looks like Nigerians are no longer interested in elections because they rarely come out. Even those who have their permanent voter cards are not interested. It's just to be able to secure one application or the other, probably get one letter or something. Not really because they want to go out to vote. Dr. Momale, as we look at Saturday's election, what really do we need? Because first and foremost, do you think there'll be a difference on Saturday, by the way? Do you think that we're going to have more people turn out for the election? And if not, what do we need to put in place to restore that confidence in our electoral process?
Thank you very much for all the discussions and the valuable contributions by my colleagues there in the studio. I think I will just briefly comment on what the Director of Voter Education, Madam Mary, just mentioned with respect to the preparations and what INEC has put in place. For example, she mentioned what the resident electoral commissioners are doing in the various states. Here in Kaduna State, for example, we have been very proactive. We have been watching events. We have studied all the 7 local governments where the elections will hold. We have reviewed the tendencies of the characteristics, the voting patterns, the threats to insecurity and violence conduct of the elections in some of the various polling units across the state. And we have engaged with various stakeholders to see how do we ensure that these elections are peaceful, how do we ensure that voters turn out for these elections. Like you earlier mentioned, for example, in some of these areas, it may just be a single polling unit or 2 polling units within an entire ward. So it's an election where unless you do spot-specific mobilization and voter engagements, you may not be able to see the number of voters you expect to see on the day of the voting. So it's very important that these stakeholders continue. It's very important for the resident electoral commissioners to continue to engage all the stakeholders at the various levels, to engage with the political parties, the candidates, and the voters in each of those polling units to create the necessary awareness. And I think here the role of the various institutions of the state is very, very important in achieving this. Speaking about the rerun elections in general, it's not always that rerun elections is always bad. Sometimes it sends very good warning and signals both to the candidates, to the electoral empire, and to the other stakeholders that, look, there is somebody out there that have the power to say that what you did is wrong, and that is the judiciary. And when you do that, they are going to stop that election, or they are going to disqualify you, or they are going to state that your election was invalid, and therefore another election has to take place. So I think it is also very important for those actors in the political process to know that there is an umpire up there that will tell you that the process you adopted or what you did here and there was inaccurate or not correct, and therefore your election is not valid. And I think that also helps in stabilizing the conduct or reducing some of the negative activities that some of the actors could have wanted to do during the elections. Now, coming back on these specific by-elections and rerun elections that will take place on Saturday, I think the political parties, the candidates have done a lot of campaigns. They have been moving from ward to ward, and since these elections, for example, are site-specific, there has been greater level of engagements with the electors within those electoral wards, within those polling units, and I do hope that our citizens will respond positively and come out in mass to exercise their democratic rights of selecting those people they want, voting for them, so that they become their representatives at the various levels of government. I think this is very important for our electorate, and we will continue to appeal to them to come out in all registered voters should come out on Saturday in those polling units, in those constituencies, to exercise and franchise their own rights. Importantly for us is that the conduct must be peaceful. It should be peaceful before the elections, so today and tomorrow we are going to keep monitoring the conduct. We have already established lines for contact to various communities in all the polling units. We have representatives. We have engaged with the religious and community leaders in all the areas, all the local governments where these elections will hold. We have already communicated what every citizen needs to do if he observes anything that will affect the safety of elections, the safety of the voters, the safety of the electoral officers. We should immediately report that, and appropriate actions will be taken to ensure that there is no violence throughout the conduct of the elections. Then, like earlier, Cynthia and Humphrey earlier mentioned, we also do hope that this is not a nationwide election. So INEC must be better prepared with its own officials and staff, and we do not expect to see delays in the arrival of voter materials. We do not expect to see non-functional equipment or inadequate supplies in terms of election materials or at the polling units. We expect to see a very free process, seamless process that will give the voters the right to vote and to be at the polling units at the right time, and the entire process will be what will make Nigerians very happy, will strengthen the confidence of Nigerians on the democratic process, and the political actors will freely, happily accept the outcomes of the Saturday elections.
Momale, thank you again. Thank you. We'll return, back to continue our conversation in just a moment after this commercial break. Don't go away.
Feel vacant.
All right, welcome back now, and we are on the homeward stretch for today. Dr. Mamadi talked about low voter turnout, of course, arising from my colleague's question, and that is one, critical area in elections, not just for by or rerun elections. So I like to again bring in Cynthia here. If you have taken note of the rating body Picodi, it says that we are probably one of the lowest country in the world in terms of voter turnout during elections, and indeed they put us at 180 something on the table, which is very appalling, and all that. Again, the latest information we have now with regards to Saturday's election is that there is very little voter awareness and sensitization, even coming from civil society organizations such as yours.
Well, yeah, voter turnout is a challenge that that is something that has bedeviled our electoral process for a while. And unfortunately, it's not getting better. If you think about the last general elections, we were still at 26% turnout, if I'm not mistaken. So you can imagine that we had less than 30% turnout for even the presidential elections. And that in itself is worrisome, because within the continent, if you compare the elections we had last year in West Africa, Liberia, Sierra Leone, the turnouts were above 60%. And these are countries that are, I would say they are smaller in size when it comes to population wise and even geography. But you could see the level of interest amongst the people to participate in these elections. And I think in Nigeria we need to ask ourselves that question as a people. What value do we place on our democracy? Because it's beyond just how we engage, how citizens engage, how institutions engage. There is a responsibility on the Electoral Commission, yes, which I said earlier that we've not seen that level of active and proactive voter education and awareness even ahead of the by-elections and rerun. But there's also the political parties. Most time political parties focus on campaigns. They're not focusing on civic and voter education and even voter mobilization. They forget that it's not just about campaigning. You need to get the people to the polls to vote. But you said civil society. Yes, there's also civil society. But civil society are more like partners who just support the process. Right, and the idea is in supporting the process, we are engaging the people to participate. But beyond all of this, honestly, for me, it's also about our mindset on how we engage the process, and that is because a lot of citizens are yet to understand that this Nigeria is our Nigeria. It's not anybody's Nigeria. If the system works, we benefit, and that we may not see the result we want immediately, but we keep working. I tell people, when you start a business and you're not yielding results, profit immediately, will you shut down and say I'm done, I will not do any business again, I will go and die of hunger? No, you keep hustling. If you try one method, it doesn't work, you try the next. That's the mindset we need to engage our process in. That yes, it's not perfect, it's not great the way we want it to be, but we can't sit back and say let us leave it for others. We need to see this as a joint project to engage the process, because turnout needs to get better to make our resources even meaningful that we invest in the elections.
Exactly, and that's why I want to get to Madam Nkem. I want to know whether INEC is concerned. I ask that because it's been a trend in all our elections, and we've not seen any different move by the Independent Electoral Commission. I'm asking you because it's your business, like she said, right? You print ballot papers, and then less than 50% are used. You procure whatever it is that you're using, and then so I want to know: is INEC comfortable with the turnout of voters for elections, that you have spent your time, your money, not your money, our money, Nigeria's money, to conduct and all of that? Is INEC, and then what is INEC doing? Because I really cannot see much. Maybe you can tell us what INEC is doing.
Well, thank you. If I say INEC is not concerned, then I'll be doing injustice to Nigerians whose money, taxpayers' money, are used to purchase and procure all the the materials for election. Well, the commission is doing a lot, and each time after any general election or any major election, the commission goes to the drawing board, invite all the relevant stakeholders, the civil society organizations, the media, the security, and everyone that plays a role in the election to find a way forward. How can we get these things better? But I would like to submit here that each day we try to improve. We say, okay, we did this thing in this way, this time let's go this way. For instance, for this rerun and by-election, the commission has made adequate arrangement to enlighten people on the fact that election is upcoming, that the election will take place on 3rd of February 2024, and at the locations and so on. But like Cynthia said, this assignment is not just for the commission alone. What of the primary beneficiaries of the outcome of this poll? The political parties, the candidates. They need to do much. They need to do more to mobilize people. Actually, it is their responsibility to mobilize voters to the polling. But
now that the political parties and the politicians are not looking in that direction, and they may have a reason why they do not want to mobilize people, to come out to
obviously be a negative reason.
Of course, negative reason. Yes, of course, yeah. Those who want to manipulate the process, they don't want people to come out just so they can, have a space.
Why.
So now that they are failing their responsibility, the politicians are not the ones, spending money for the electoral process. All right, it is the duty of INEC solely. Yes, they are, a key beneficiaries and of course key players in the whole process. But now that we have a problem and it's been persistent, I mean, INEC should take up the initiative.
That is why the commission ensure that we enlighten voters. Let them know their rights and responsibilities. What are my role? What am I supposed to do as regards this election? So we make them to know their rights and responsibilities. And we also tell them the benefits of going out to vote. But like we said, the politicians, the candidates, they need to do more. So I think going forward, I'm not an authority like a member of the commission, but I think going forward, usually we engage with them. I think maybe this discussion needs to come up in the engagement with political parties, of the need for them to do the needful, to play their role well, so that they can mobilize citizens within their locality to come out on election day and vote. But that does not mean the commission doesn't do it at all. Like I said, we do a lot. We have voter education and publicity department at the national level. Because of the importance of this department, it's replicated at the state level. And not just that, the commission also has a desk officer in charge of voter education and publicity at each local government, the 774
How well did they do their
local
jobs?
government area.
How well did they do their jobs?
And we not only start at, they do their job, and we didn't stop at that. At a point we had to apply to the NYC to get approval to set up what we call the CD group for INEC CDS group for corpers on election. When they are in camp, we go there to the camp, sensitize them, and we call for volunteers of those that want to be part of the INEC CDS group. And what do? They also on their CDDs, just like others in other ministries and organizations, go out to do their role. Like road safety, we see them. The INEC CDS group also go to the locality, the community, to sensitize people and enlighten them.
Okay, I'm sorry. We are discussing the rerun elections for tomorrow, and basically is to enlighten, both the voters and the candidates. IPAC is a body that comprise party members, party executives that we thought or we believe have better understanding of both the constitutional provisions, the legal provisions, and of course the electoral provisions. And we expect that IPAC should take the responsibility of not just educating the voters but also enlightening their party members, if we must have a hitch-free and safe elections. But it would appear that IPAC is not alive to this responsibility. So in advising IPAC now against tomorrow's election, what will be as an expert, what will be your message to IPAC, with specific reference to Plateau?
Yes, so my advice is to them is simple. Let's not run a democracy without Democrats. Let us be a democracy in which we have Democrats leading the process and doing everything it takes to ensure that the broader interest of society, the broader interest of the community prevails. And myself and Cynthia were just discussing a while ago that actually it's not in every case that you use the legal means, or the let me say stubbornness to resolve. There are also political there are also political solutions. The political parties that feel maybe they have been they are out of the game now, they can even decide and say, okay, the particular candidates that were affected in this particular case, in the next election they'll be given rights of first refusal for tickets. This is a political solution. And even if they are very imaginative, I'm not a politician, but from studying elections, there could even be a mechanism for them to work politically to even win these elections by working with other political parties that are participating in the elections. So I really don't understand why they insist on muddying the waters and creating all of these distractions. But we just hope and we keep doing the moral suasion in this situation, and try to ensure that they do not take the laws into their hands. They do not unnecessarily overheat the polity in that particular state. But having said that, I think there is also a fundamental issue that comes up when we talk about voter apathy, because incidents like this can also contribute to voter apathy, because people will feel, okay, the space is overheated, I don't want to come out, I don't want to be a part of any violent activity and all of that. And the people who are usually affected are women voters and people with disabilities, because of course they do not want to be in a situation where there's violence. But the overarching discussion on voter apathy has to do with the question whether democracy is delivering on development, and we cannot run away from that question. So you may ask INEC to make all the reforms in the world. If democracy fails to deliver for the people, if it fails to deliver on security, it fails to deliver on quality of life of the people, then the people will stay away from the polls. We are seeing what the economy is doing. We are seeing what the economy is is doing to Nigerians today. We are seeing a level of poverty in the country. We are seeing job losses. Businesses are closing down. When the democratic process and the people who are elected are not able to put their, because we must always have discussions beyond the ballots. So what are the people voting for? And that's why in these rerun elections, apart from the fact that we want people to go out and vote, what are the conversations on key governance issues that even the candidates are putting forward in the discussion? In fact, as a matter of fact, the political parties practically did not campaign in this election. There was no energy in this election.
Okay, we're trying to fast forward. What kind of security would you like to see in place in Plateau?
So we want to see security in terms of the opinion leaders and the people who can shape perceptions in the elections, talk to people to calm down, to bring down the tension. Then of course there must be enough presence of security to give that confidence to the voters to come out there and exercise the franchise.
All right, Amsfree, thank you. I want to get back to Dr. Momale now, and from what Amsfree just said about development, democracy bringing about development, it now has taken a different dimension, because politicians take advantage of the fact that governments do not really deliver, and so they play with the electorate by giving them, if you like, buying their votes. So I'm actually talking about vote buying. So instead of delivering the dividends of democracy, in the course of being in power, just to empower the people, so you can have a free process during the elections, you withhold the good things of life from them. And when it's time for election, you give them 15,000, 5,000, and all of that just to sway them to your side. Dr. Momale, this is a worrisome dimension, because we've seen that, yes, it's marring the whole electoral process. You know what happens is the highest bidder that eventually gets the highest number of votes on election day. What do you think is the way out, of this particular situation? And looking at the present economic realities, I'm just wondering what's going to play out on Saturday. That's tomorrow, because, but just give your perspective, as regards vote buying.
Thank you very much. I think it's one of the major challenges that any democracy can face, where citizens begin to look at what to get in a single day over what they will get over a 4-year period. This has been very important in Nigeria's democratic history, and I think the tendency got worse if we take from, for example, in 1999, when we had the first national elections, to the most recent elections, the issue of vote buying kept on growing over time. But I think it is high time, Armstrong have mentioned it, Cynthia has mentioned it, that what is the value? What value do we place on the democratic process, and what value do we place on governance? And what type of conversations are we having around these issues? The media have a very central role to play in this. I think the NTA is leading this in creating the right environment, passing out the right messages and information to the citizenry. As long as politicians will just see election days as the most important days where they will bring in cash and win the elections, we will continue to lack in democratic dividends, will continue to be deficient in good governance, and we will not see what we want to see, and we continue to move backwards. Now, in the past, prior to the recent reforms by the Independent National Electoral Commission, there was ballot stuffing. So with the card readers, with the increased introduction of technology into our electoral process, we are beginning to see the voter turnout diminishing. Possibly not because there were more voters in the past, but possibly because there was higher level of ballot box stuffing in the past. Possibly there were few people coming out to vote at those times, but because the ballots were stuffed, we saw higher numbers. So I think we have to give credibility to the electoral umpire over these developments, and moving forward, when we begin to see what we call electronic voting, by the time we get there and we begin to introduce systems where people can vote with little contact between them and maybe election officials or party officials, then the issue of vote buying will also diminish, because you may not even see the voters, and the environment may not even be conducive for you to go there with bags of money to give to people. So I think it also lies out there for YAGA, the media and other professionals to sit together with the Independent National Electoral Commission, engage Nigerians, and see how can we improve the election processes, how can we improve the democratic processes in such a way that money will become valueless, irrespective of how much of such money you have. I think we are beginning to see that in other sectors, where irrespective of
Dr. Mamale, Dr. Salim Mamale, thank you, and thank you indeed for acknowledging the role of NTA, of course, in also sensitizing and bringing awareness, to the electorate. Thank you. But just the last sentence. All right, I'm told we really don't have time. I wanted to ask what provisions you're also making for people living with disability. We've seen some institutions, of course, mainstreaming these people more specifically in the processes. But let me quickly appreciate all our contributors today. Mary Nkem, who is Director of Voter Education and Publicity, INEC. Thank you very much for coming to share your preparations with us. Cynthia Mbamalu, Director Program, YAGA Africa. Cynthia, thank you. Always a pleasure to hear you. And Arms Free Ajanaku, media and elections expert. Also a pleasure to have your thoughts with us. Dr. Salim Mamale, you joined us, of course, from our Kaduna studio. It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us for this conversation, Dr. Mamale. All right, then let's quickly take a look at AFCON 2023 and other sports updates.
Nigeria and Angola will on Friday, February 2nd fight for the chance to progress to the semi-finals of the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations. Both teams have been unbeaten in their 4 matches played at the tournament, with a hard-fought encounter expected at the Stade Felix Houphouët-Boigny in Abidjan. Nigeria, however, will be the favourites to overcome the Angolans and take a further step towards the quest for a 4th continental crown. The Super Eagles started their AFCON adventure with a shaky 1-0 draw with Equatorial Guinea, but produced a smash-and-grab display to win a 1-0 win over host Cote d'Ivoire on matchday 2. Nigeria then needed an own goal to dispatch lowly Guinea-Bissau in their last group match, only for two brilliant Ademola Lookman goals to power them past Cameroon in the round of 16. Angola, however, on an unprecedented 3 AFCON wins in a row, and a triumph over Nigeria will not only guarantee a historic 4th, but will also lift the Pelancas Negras to a first ever appearance in the semi-finals. While this is Nigeria's 102nd match at the AFCON, it is the first time the 3-time winners are meeting Angola. Nigeria have only ever lost one quarter-final tie in 16 attempts.
Alex Iwobi gets the ball down to the left-hand side, the delivery comes in, oh, it's a great goal, they got a goal, Nigeria!
All right, that's Good Morning Nigeria today. Many thanks for being a part of it. We hope you enjoy your weekend. And yes, watch the match between the Super Eagles and Angola. I'm Ian Ray John. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't watch. I'll just wait for the... All right, from all of us here, German crew, have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.